who are the owners, the board, and the managing directors and the editorial staff of these so-called information outlets? Who are they? Why not put them in front of the camera? Where did you come from again? So you came in and called Geert Wilders a far rightist. Why did you come to that conclusion? The editor. You need to go to the editors. And then just give them 10, 15 minutes. And submit that to public debate with some type of polling mechanism that isn't falsifiable. Imagine it's like 10,000 down votes subjected to public scrutiny, and then maybe like 1,500 comments of like the most astute people off the street writing like 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs. Imagine that. Oh no, comments are locked. That's what they do. And oh no, they don't go in front of camera, but they're gonna all lockstep misrepresent candidates as the far right. So now what other advantage do they have? Well, of course, when these charlatans are finally thrown out of office after committing crimes that would put Mao Zedong to shame, then it's, they're hoping people will then swing back to the extreme left and then give them a shot of 4 or more years of destroying the country. And then it's going to swing back to another fake far right type of thing that they can then be the sad clown on whatever policies they propose that don't get instituted. So returning to the Tory party, because it's just like an international scandal at this point. They came in on the anti-immigration platform. They just didn't deliver. Sorry. 13 years later, the country is overrun with a hybrid invasion. Sorry, we just couldn't manage it. The people in the background, the blob that nobody talks about either or investigates, they decided otherwise. So there was a popular mandate, but it got overruled in our not so democratic democracy, not so well-informed public. So what is the solution to that? Well, people, you need to start organizing and vetting your candidates more, and there is no one on the far right. And why is that? Like, is that a good thing? Do they have a lot of historical tropes? Why that is a bad thing? Do you believe those poison frames, or are you more of a modern person that's not living in some type of memory war inspired misunderstanding or convoluted type of ideological viewpoint? Well, if we look at the numbers, you're most likely the latter. And you really do need to start doing some questioning why you think the things you do. And if you find there's some type of moral reasons that aren't based on anything you've experienced in your own lifetime, in fact, maybe it's the opposite, like all the bad things are coming from different directions than boogeymen, then maybe you should reconsider some things, like whether or not that piss in your face is water or not. Because if it isn't water, and it is piss, you need to start doing some different things than what you've been doing up until now, and really on the party, organizational, and also cynical levels. One of these news outlets misrepresents someone as far right. You sort of know what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a biased and semi-defunct news outlet that is something stinks. You know, there's that vague note of sulfur might not be intense, but it's still there. So yeah, these news outlets that I've been looking, and I have to go through them. Some news outlets are just unwatchable on the face of it. That's also by design, by the way. They don't want you being informed. They just want you going along with the program. And if it's so off-putting that you just put off being informed, that's a good outcome for them. And they've done it to a lot of people. It's a deep politicization. What do they call that? Depoliticizing operation. Which you would think in democratic societies this is the opposite of what people want, but obviously for monopolies, shakedown operations, infomercial type outfits, they got a different profit model. Despite, I know it's hard to understand, despite presenting themselves as being journalistically interested, that's all through a filter of their own self-interest. So I would say in the English-speaking world, 50% are more or less unwatchable because they're so off-putting. Then you can look at what anybody covering sports, except just like the exceptions, that is just a total waste of time. Anybody covering people talking about the weather basically in a pseudo-sophisticated way, waste of time. Interested geopolitical entities that have more money than they should. Like, why isn't Chad on the news as much as self-interested parties? Well, they didn't have the money to let the world care enough about them. Okay? So that's a factor. And the good news is, though, again, before you had programming, so CBS, Walter Cronkite, whatever, that was the news hour. You had a half hour to sit through whatever crap he came up with. Now, the good news was he didn't come up with a whole lot of crap, but he's obviously let a lot of stuff out. Otherwise, the country wouldn't have fallen into such disrepair. But today, you can watch what you want at your convenience, at least for now. Just realize that 80% of it is crap. So curating that now, there are watchable news agencies. I would still say 50% of their content is crap. Some of it's 80%, but they might have 2 stories that are interesting. That they, by mistake, or somehow got through the editorial censorship and distortion barrier. And it's funny, some of these editors, they make mistakes. So if a good story gets out by mistake, they get fired internally. We don't even hear about it. But some maniac comes in shrieking and throwing furniture or something like that. And the next day the person's not there and they have some appointee that knows what to do. So these news agencies in so-called capitalist countries, they're disgraceful. Just pure garbage. And then just think how much money they're garbage producers. They're paid for producing garbage. Just imagine that. So you're the broke guy. You're the broke, out of work technician. They're the wrecking crew that are having fancy suits tailored for themselves, plan their next vacation. Man, just think of that. The reality of that, the manifest reality of that. So, okay, coming back to far right. Le Pen, total phony fakers. Not even close to right. I would just call that some type of like third way nonsense. She's going to win the election now. What? Turn France around? I'd like to see that. How far right do you think Napoleon would place that overweight secretary? What do you think? So what's another phony far right? Oh, let's not forget Tories are far right. Yeah, sure they are. Oh, the idiot in Argentina that came out. He's far right now. He's just like Trump, they say. There's a bunch of different scenarios, but they're not looking real good, especially when your leadership's messed up. Simplify leadership. Get rid of these personalities. The truck driver. He's the president of the truck. He's a bad driver. The truck's not going to make it. And so you're the people. Don't elect people that are not qualified to do the job. You know what? A lot of truck drivers, you talk to them, they don't got big mouths, but they get the job done. I'd rather have one of those than some showman. Imagine he rolls out of the truck like this. Was this Yaver, the snowman from Argentina? So he rolls out like a cannonball, and then pops up and does a cartwheel, and starts talking about this and that and this and that, and who he knows and how great it was 10 years ago when the discos were the way they were, and isn't it a problem that people can't afford bread, and jumps back in the truck and floors it out of the the parking lot. What? Who would allow that to happen? Oh, well, it was the Argentinian people that came up with that candidate, I guess. The far rightist, as these lockstep numbnuts would have you believe. But coming back, left, right, just forget about it. Just, I don't know who came up with this idiocy. I mean, it was probably the Leninists. It's some type of method. It's completely misleading and stupid. Left, right, center. What are these idiotic descriptions? It's something like political scientists have to justify their existence, so they come up with some type of measure, some one measure fits all that doesn't fit anything appropriately, and then they can somehow proclaim expert status in politics. You know, I'm so in tune with our degraded systems, and I've been educated and sent through the brain blasting program that I know, because I can identify things like mushrooms in a book. This is a far rightist, according to the current vernacular. So give me a job, right? Like, who's going to pay for you? Who's going to give you that job? They shouldn't give you that job. You don't know a damn thing about anything. So, but certainly not running the country, not covering the right stories, not having accurate analysis. But, they would admit that probably privately. But, then the shoulders go up, the shrug. This is the world we live in. This is the owner, this is the management, this is the crap coming out. So, but as consumers, look, 90% is crap. Move around, look for some new outlets. It's great also. This is also a phenomenon. New outlets come out, they're fresh, they're covering things, they get noticed. Some investors come in, and then it goes back to crappy formulas, making sure to include this story about this special interest crew, covering them exactly how they want to be presented, which is a complete fabrication. And then some filler here. We got the climate lobby that wants to keep bringing its nonsense into the public sphere as political filler that has zero use outside of that. Maybe some lawyer lobby groups that are in on that. Who knows? Environmental groups that mess up kids, type groups that have just so much money. It's crazy. It's almost as if they might even be, in the drug laundering business because they got so much money. But the bank says it's proceeds from a car wash operation, something like that. So that's not the democracy that George Washington envisioned. Now, for the realist to say that that's the only way things can be done, you're not a realist. You're a crapalist. You're a defeatist. You're a non-entity. If you're part of that, you join that because you think that's the only way of doing things. You have thrown your lot in with the junk. So I think many of them do realize that on a basic level. But, we're talking about people with zero integrity. So projecting morality on people is just a fruitless enterprise. It's just really a big mistake. So, but when you see it, it's just like a crappy plate of food that they put down in front of you. Don't eat it. Just say, all right, look, this is yours. I'm not coming back to this venue again. I know what this stuff looks like. I know what it tastes like. And guess what? It's a sadistic waste of my time. Now, if that was not the intention, then you're just an ignoramus. But if it was, well, the con isn't going to work. At least not on this customer. And at the end of the day, they don't care. They're doing the numbers. 80% of people will probably buy it based on the format on some level, and that's what they're shooting for. The 20% that see through those cons, that they want to alienate those people because those are their real competition in the forum of ideas. So Geert Wilders, let's just call him the Dutch Toryist, or do-nothingist. 25 years in, he's apparently some type of far rightist, promising like the Tories to reduce immigration. Let's see if he does it, and if he doesn't, let's see why not. But some of the new news was that Finland just closed all of its borders to Russia because you would think Russians would be leaving Russia, but no, their security services keep Russians from leaving Russia. But what they do send is a bunch of people from Syria that they've trained in camps. They don't fly gliders, but they do ride bikes that they get very close to the border by people with ski masks, helmets, and heavy machine guns. But in the West, they're framing that as a humanitarian crisis. So if you're a far rightist, you won't be able to say that because you just want to reduce the bamboozle. You don't want to stop or reverse the bamboozle because that would be way too far for center leftists who are living in a disinformation sociology type of fabrication. So it'll be interesting to see how things go down. At this point, after the Tories, what could be worse? There's really nothing worse than that. They will go down in history as some of the worst in history, and all these other European wonks too. Maloney, she's going down in history. This Wilders, he'll go down if he doesn't do anything. Schultz, he's going down. Merkel, she's already down. She's part of it. Before her, Schroeder, yup. Who else? Well, now you got, it's funny, the split. You got Hungary and Slovakia in the what do you want to call it, the criminal racket game. They're sort of like the old school uh, rackets, but the new school in the West, that's just imagine you bring somebody back from like the 70s or 80s, like some type of person who was specially educated in sabotage, what he would say about these different representatives. What do you think he would say? Would he give them like high marks or like negative marks? But of course, we have to pretend that that's not the game that's happening. All that happened because people wanted these grotesque changes to happen. Because it's just intuitive that people just are so welcoming, and then of course, nothing is working for the people that are living there to the extent that they need to fresh infusions of slaves that they don't even care where they come from type of management. That's your political class. God, that's like the worst you could possibly have. That is the worst. So these people are the worst, and they should be accountable for that. And again, criminal negligence, that's something that could go into effect. If a new party, a legitimate, authentic party ever gets elected, criminal negligence charges, you could just pass that bill. Every single last one of them would be guilty on the basis of criminal negligence. They had a responsibility to the people they represented. They not only failed, but there's again the proof of complicity with the other side is perhaps too onerous, but just on the basis of basic facts, that they are negligent. So depending on how much time they've been in, but I think 15 to 10 years will probably be a standard sentence for political operatives going forward. But that's not a far right proposal. That's a dead center proposal. That's a proposal from the dead center, but not the dead center in the sense of dead. That's the center of authenticity. I saw the other day on one of these infotainment shows that you shouldn't watch. Like, if you're watching infotainment, just stop that right now. Like, anything about celebrity gossip, especially like celebrity gossip, you just think how demeaning that whole stupid industry is that they've been demoted. Like, they can't really cover the real issues because then they'd get in trouble. So they focus on these dramatic nobodies. Essentially, that's what they are. Who picked them? Like, why are they interesting with their dumb opinions about politics, history, sociology, psychology? You name it, the list is long. But they have, like, imagine this, like young people, like some fresh blondie with big boobs that is really adamant that she knows what real feminism is or something like that. That right there. Just realize these women that Budinsky'd their way into positions they don't belong into, they profited. But this is something women will do amongst each other, is they'll give other women bum steers because they want to be number one. So they'll do stuff like, oh, that dress just looks wonderful with your shoes, and meaning and hoping that you're dumb enough to believe it. Look, feminism is a version of that. It's them telling young, otherwise attractive women how to take on opinions that make them off-putting in every sense of the word, because they're power-mongering, hungry people that they've changed your perspective on life. They've put you in this frame of mind that if you're doing stuff that women have traditionally done, then you're the slave in a relationship, when there's no discussion at all about what women brought to the table back in the day. Your grandmothers, they were way better than you. Way better. And they did a lot of things also way better than you back in their day, because their society and civilization didn't give them a bum steer, didn't send them off into the wrong direction of the desert. And the desert is preferable to where a lot of these other women go. They end up in the worst types of circumstances, which is understandable from the standpoint of a civilized person, but they don't understand it. Why does everyone else have a problem with them? Look, ladies, as long as you're hot, you'll get some dummy to listen to whatever you have to say. But the second you're not, that game dries up. Or you have a couple of old dummies you've hypnotized to keep around, but that's not what power looks like. That's not good times. That's not achievement. That's a basic B non-accomplishment. And the whole way down to perdition and purgatory is really grating. Every minute to be around a unhelpful type of person, uncooperative, big-mouthed, selfish, egotistical, convinced of themselves, vain. I mean, I could go on and on, but this is the problem. See, women will say, oh, this guy's a hater, because they're all about the brand, selling females, right? Because they're female, and of course, because they're so self-obsessed, any criticism of a woman, they feel, oh, this is a threat to the group, the herd. A lion has jumped out of the bushes here. Let's all run in unison. But that's not what I am. I am not the predator. See, that's a misapplication of these bum steering women that have told you that men that will tell you the truth are the bad guys. Nope, they're not. See, other men didn't go to the fathers to ask permission. They went to ask them whether or not it was a possibility, and that he was more looking to hear from the father, like, well, look, son, I know she looks good, but she's crazy, so forget about it. She does this, this, and this. If you want to do this, this, and that, leave it alone. In fact, this is not that I'm betraying my daughter. I would tell her the same thing. Here's this guy who came, he's got this, this, and this not going for him. I wouldn't advise it. Now, at the end of the day, dummies will dummy. But if a father gave me the straight up and down about his daughter, and he was not a chump, simp, sucker, which many of these fathers unfortunately are, it's just the nature of the beast. But seriously, I would tell a suitor, and you know what that does? That transfers my responsibility to the responsibility of the third parties. That means I am clean. I have purified myself. I have fulfilled my contract. I have told the man the truth. If he takes it up, and I tell my daughter the truth, she does something she wants to do, it's on them. Okay? It is on them. My problem is that we got people out here persuading young people to do the wrong thing by default. I'm against that. But see, that's the ideology that they have. And why was it so beguiling? Because no one would have thought in the world that our own institutions would sell us a whole bunch of bad ideas in unison for a bunch of people that had a reason for doing so. In many cases, geopolitical, that we didn't understand and were led to believe did not exist. That whatever humbug there was years ago, that's no longer in play. We're not in a Cold War type situation, so just forget about it. Listen to these people. Or listen to the people that these people have indoctrinated to appear to be normal and have placed in positions throughout the university. They're all playing in unison as far as these sociological and psychological tropes go. So I said in the last episode, this whole thing about voting and female participation, it's overblown. There is not a man in this world that doesn't deal with a woman usually on some level or another. Women surround men. They're all around. There's no man that has not been born without a mother. Then some are blessed enough to have sisters that are sensible and not crazy. Okay, then there's cousins, there's women all around men all the time. Okay? Men ask women questions, and women also tell men things that they know. And a lot of times they discuss things amongst themselves. So when the man makes the decision to vote, that's no big deal. Okay? How many families, it's just doubling the vote. The wife says vote for Poroshenko, okay? They both vote for Poroshenko, what's the point? Now the man, if he knows why that somebody shouldn't be voting for Poroshenko, then he has to say, hey, you know what, I know why you think that's a good idea, but it's not. So don't vote for Poroshenko. Now, if she wants to be a big, sassy know-it-all and whatnot, then there we have it. A normal situation between men and women. They disagree on the most basic things, but what does it matter at the end of the day? People that can't pull it together on that level shouldn't be voting anyway. Who cares about their damn vote? They've got a right to vote because they were born in a country that they despise and undermine. Hell no, I don't give a damn about your vote. And don't vote for me. I don't want to trick you. I don't want to persuade you. All right? I want to dissuade you. But ultimately, it doesn't matter if you vote for me or not. It's not like I'm the candidate. I'm not running for your approval. And I'm also not running for my own self-interest, as beguiling as that may appear. In a cynical age which is dominated by these political operators. Okay, I get it, but it's, there, it rains every once in a while in Arizona too, even though it's not supposed to, whether you like it or not. So that's sort of how the world is. Women go back, okay? They told you a bunch of phony baloney about the Victorian age. Go back to other places then. But certainly go back. I know in places like Central Europe, women had their stuff put together, and the men they dealt with, they were very happy to have made their acquaintances or shared their lives with. And then there were other places where that ratio of good relationships was like non-existent. And a lot of it did have to do with the culture. You have a culture that's telling women to be bigger problems than they need to be, based on based on vain principles, based on power dynamics. That's not going to work. It's not going to hold together, and it doesn't. So don't get even more enraged about the bad causality. Reverse engineer it. Where did you go wrong? You stopped listening to men. You were listening to old ladies that got cooked up in some type of terroristic institution. Because where does all that astroturf come from, do you think? Sociological astroturf that's agitatory? What do you think? Where does that come from? Who are the people that benefit from that. Cui bono, okay? It's that simple. So the word, I suggest, don't even pick it up. Okay, they got a bunch of words like that. Do a cursory Google search, and you'll come up with some theories that connect together the bad sociology you've been subjected to in a more or less monopolized, totalitarianistic institution that just sing-songed it to you, pitched it to you. Okay? And you just accepted it, and then the dummies that learned it in the same textbook, then you start talking about it. You're still in the trap. There is nothing good about it. It was a red herring, and worse than that. It has screwed up more relationships than you can imagine. I mentioned in the last episode 800,000 fentanyl deaths this year. How many relationships has feminism wrecked? I'd say every one of them it's ever came in contact with. Whether there's some bossy broads that would beg to differ or not. And that was really one of the funny things about Argentina. They shut all those institutions down. Or maybe not all, but they wanted to. They had increased the institutions. Like, there's 100 institutions. It made no sense. So that's the future. They can do it there. They can do it anywhere. They all need to just be shut down. Okay, those were the people that benefited from the trope. They got a 9-to-5 job that they could slack off on for blarney money and who knows what other money, like what other kicks they got for that. That's less than 1% of humanity. And yet they want to wreck it for 99% of the rest of us that could have had deep, meaningful, and fulfilling relationships. And yet that was just not considered an option or considered exceptional in my time. Hell no. Anybody involved with that, they're pure poison. And I'm very sorry that that insect-like pesticide was sprayed around you for so long, but now that you know the truth, it's your job to eradicate it from your mind and from your relationships and never talk about it again. It's not relevant, it's not controversial, it's not edgy, it's nothing but a waste of time. And for those that are really stuck on themselves and their false identity that they've been railroaded into, I get it, but guess what? Other women that didn't buy that BS that you did, they know you look like crap, and so does everyone else. Like, you can act like a complete ass at a party, but it's not like your alternative reality is going to prevail all the time. Okay, and even if you have 80% of yes people and women and cronies and whatever else are out there these days, no one should care about that crowd. Like, that crowd can go. Have you ever been to a place like a very chill, like let's say a magical grotto, and just out of the blue, two groups show up and there's hooting and hollering and just a complete surprise that the place could get that way. And then you're thinking like, what? The place completely changes, right? The venue completely changes. The institution completely changes. The society completely changes. Okay? When those groups just disappear and you're back to a pristine beach, perhaps on like a Tuesday at an hour before noon, nobody's there, right? That's how fast all of these bad things can go, especially from your individual life, and you should empower yourself to purify yourself, and you should put in the work and do it every day. How about these people? They're working that hard on their butts, but will not work on their mental health. or being a beneficial person to someone else in a relationship. By identifying one's abilities and working together as a team. Why is that too radical to say in this bum year? I don't give a damn about this year. I don't give a damn about contemporaries. I don't give a damn about idiots from the past or the future. You can't hear that? You can't reform yourself? Good luck, baby. Because you're on the road to perdition. And without me, for sure. And that's the way all of us can roll that are living super normal lives. We can live super normally together, or we can live super normally apart. That's just the way it is. For these young guys leveraged or compromised or blinded by these broads, you're on the road to perdition too. The worst thing that could happen for you is to get what you want. So change what you want. Increase your standards. Have some dignity. Have some compassion for yourself. Do not put yourself through these ringers of relationships. If they're not reciprocal, cut them, period. Do it however you need to do it. There's nothing good about staying in some type of hell. You do that 3 years later, you might be able to help me out on something like I broke down and luckily you were there and had the tools. You throw yourself off a bridge because of a broad. I don't got that, so by telling you the truth, giving you a pep talk or whatever, snapping you out of it, I'm putting a positive causality out into the world so that you are there and not in a negative trajectory, which goes beyond this life, by the way. You throw this chance to improve your practice away, it doesn't get better for you in the next lives. It doesn't. It gets worse. So right there, the skeptics see doubt will hinder you from just accepting that on faith. But the faithful, they don't have that problem. They're already on board. And that's why they make it. If a deer starts throwing itself against the electric fence, I want to know, like, why. Maybe not in one instance, but if 100 deer throw themselves against the electric fence, that's something to look into. So maybe their instincts aren't wrong on some level, so what are they reacting to? Maybe fake politics, maybe provocations, maybe thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of their best people have been murdered in different types of psychological ways. So we need to look at both sides of the dimensionality of the issue before we start deciding that they were completely wrong. Like, even if we make them the equivalent of Wildschwein, look, boar will react to something that's spooked them. So imagine you got these crazy people, maybe proxies paid by different other interests that might be more favorable to them in a geopolitical setting. If there's some type of catastrophe such as the one we've witnessed, so they set off a smoke bomb amongst boar, and then the boars start charging through the forest and they start attacking their own people and everybody else. So this might be one of those things where we're talking about multi-dimensionality of nefarious geopolitical interests, of which the Russians are just one small part. If they can be destabilized, who's going to benefit the most from that? Of course, it's the Chinese and the proxies that the Chinese have that might also be in California and other places because they paid a bunch of people a lot. So we're still operating in a nationalistic framework, and yet we're dealing with personalities that are global, right? Global personalities that don't have any national affiliation but will go where the money goes. There might be UK Schwein, might be Germans, you can find the worst of the profiteers in any place. Like the fat, imagine you're boiling a fat of some type of meaty bits. What floats to the top? It's not the best. It's some type of substitutionist rot that finds connection with, again, people that are, their sole intent is taking everything down. But you can pay people to take everything down. You can pay people to do anything. So the West, defenseless against such a thing in again, geopolitical contexts that were never before imagined. That's the gangrenous situation that the West gets to endure in their cities at this point. But tomorrow, with penicillin, a new way of looking at things, everything can be cured. But not with them. So recognize them like red blood cells that have been empowered to see the new contagion. Well, they are victorious. They're victorious in a biological sense and victorious in a social, economic, political, and geopolitical sense. One thing about problems that is the most problematic is understanding the problem in the first place, or whether or not it's a problem. Or the meta type of questions like, what is the point of focusing on a specific problem or another, or why are you making a problem problematic when that is volitional in many cases, especially regarding speculation, analysis, comprehensive understanding, or a desire to have a friendship with something that you don't even understand on any type of fundamental level, because what you're dealing with is a party that isn't interested in being understood from the outside. In fact, it would do anything to misrepresent itself according to the principles of a public relations campaign. So there's the snowblowing variety, which is everything we do is good, everything we do is justified, everything we do is right, and that's a political decision. So if we use it in the context of a company that's polluting the environment, that means also distracting the public from that fact, or packaging it, repackaging it in such a way that people will weigh the pros and cons more in the way that the management board has decided, for example, to prioritize profits over the interests of the community. In this case, it's an abstract interest of the purity of the earth as a whole. Which, of course, you can overdo things. Like, nothing you do in this world is necessarily without consequence. But for the people that are profiting by things that do have secondary side effects that also are of a political nature, then you can see that you start getting into gray areas of people who profit by certain things and other people don't, and then the games people play to get around that fundamental issue. So already there, that basic outline, that sketch with a piece of charcoal on a big canvas, it's already filled with complexity. Now, some people would say it's impossible to see through it. Well, no, actually, no, it's not. Like, think of big mathematical equations that you can write on a chalkboard, right? From one side to the next. And it's all true. It all works. It is accurate. It does work. Now you can pull somebody from the street and they'll see it and just, they're looking at hieroglyphics, right? They don't know what they're looking at. But people that are scientists can either confirm that it works or it doesn't. It's true or it's not. Now, as far as human relations go and political relationships and international relationships, it really does help to know what you're dealing with. So, and if you're just dealing with the propaganda that a department produces, then there's really no way to understand, again, what are the fundamental issues. But if you're dealing with an entity that doesn't feel like it needs to negotiate on any level, or if it does, it's just as a matter of convenience, that ultimately the goal is to just destroy the competition, then you are really wasting your time negotiating with an entity that has that as its primary goal. And again, this is really hard for normal, good people, or generally good people, to understand. You can get into situations like that where you're dealing with that type of situation. These people, they don't care if your life is bearable. They don't care if you can support yourself financially. They don't care about your health care system. They don't care if your politicians are honest or not. They don't care if ships are being built. They don't care. Or if they do care, they care that something's working on your side. And so they start thinking how they can mess that up. So really, before you would think you're taking crazy pills or completely paranoid, well, in the case right now in global politics, that's sort of what we have. We have a runaway security outfit with 100,000+ members, just spread throughout all important positions, civilian and military, fusion, that are in it for themselves, period. And they have no problem with the other side, other people, other languages, you name it, anything being completely destroyed. You have a great cake factory somewhere that's helping people on your side, they would rather see that destroyed. You have a nice little private zoo somewhere that is pretty nice and well run, and the children have a great time going there. They want to mess that up in some way because that is something they don't have, or they don't see why anyone that they're fundamentally against should have something nice. So that's really hard to grasp. It's really hard to grasp that there's not just people like that, but gigantic organizations that have an entire, like oil wells, everything, the entire wealth of the biggest country in the world behind them. That's pretty daunting to think about. And yet, on the other hand, will they really achieve their ultimate goals, or will they just end up messing up a lot of things that they really had no business messing up in the first place? And so that their ultimate goal to have ultimate control never comes into reality, but they do destroy a lot of things on their way there to a trope. But then you have the problem that people like that don't fundamentally question themselves on that fundamental level because it's off limits. In a prisoner dilemma, they're the prisoner that has decided to cheat to win. Like that in game theory, that's the choice they're taking. They're not taking the choice. Like they came up with the idea, they ran the math. If you cheat every time, chances of you winning are like 51%, something like that. So they lose 49% of the time, but they win 51% of the time. So they just, from the standpoint of a nihilist, someone who has no morality, nothing other than what do they need to do in the moment? Their normative, sociological conditioning is, okay, these are the powerful people, they say do 10 jumping jacks, I'm going to do 11. Right? You need to lie about the enemy, well then tell them that we're going to do a broadcast where they claim that everyone's eating squirrels in London, because that's what's desired from the people that have a say-so in a fabricated social dynamic. So that's really quite disappointing on a lot of different levels, but it's also understandable that that could have happened given the circumstances of 1917. And then finally, get this, the security service just got rid of the politicos. They were afraid of the politicians that put them at work. Now, of course, there were some internal disputes, and they did attack each other. So there was really no quite logical progression. It was just more or less the randomness of factionalism, paranoia, and impunity that has led to the current iteration of their organization. But on the other hand, you have to say it does give them a certain amount of efficiency, doesn't it? It's a corporation. Corporation that has no, invents its own legality as it goes along. So there might be legality on the books. They don't care. That legality is for people outside of the company. People inside of the company, they can rationalize any type of extra legality that they need, including some story. Oh, the guy was shot in the back. I guess it was a unsolved mystery. He was a popular, talented leader, so. But that's one less problem now for their credibility. So they can just go back to fabricating the social narrative as they go. So to see that happen really does help you understand things a lot more, and also helps you to detach a lot more from some type of perceived commonality that really was never there in the first place, right? You know, imagine you have a guide. You're thinking this guide is a guide, right? He presents himself as a guide. Maybe he has a backstory. Maybe even a few people have recommended him. Who knows? But maybe he's not the guy that the other people had, and you just assume that he's on your side, right? He's going to do what he says he's going to do, but He's got a whole different agenda. Maybe somebody called him and said, hey, you know what? Don't guide them there. Tell them you're going to guide them there, but guide them off a cliff instead. The people are really, when they're flying off a cliff, they're really surprised that those types of games were played. They don't know what was the reason behind it. They don't know the people behind it, personalities. It could also be a wrong decision, but because someone thought it was the right decision, that's what happens. So good people are always trying to find the goodness in others. And a lot of times they do that via delusional means. They're deluding themselves. No, you're not dealing with fair people, good people, people that want the best for themselves or others. They're just in some type of parallel world where impunity is what sort of drives them, not any other type of principles. So the impunity to lie, just no problem, no problemo. What? the soup can is yellow, but oh, here's the script. Say the soup can is red. All right, no problemo. People will say whatever they need to say because again, they're playing towards their own internal audience that has its own motives. And the motive is not to tell people the truth, which is yellow soup cans. Right? That's how they operate. So smooth operators, right? Oh, and the causality is they get a pat on the hat from the prisoner dilemma people that have chosen the reprehensible decision for personal benefit. So yeah, that's that solves the mystery, doesn't it? Why things just would not work the right way, doesn't it? And then if you realize they're not, oh no, they're not stuck in some building. That's just one part. The rest is spread all across the social spectrum, especially the economy. You don't know which one of them has some type of deal. So in other words, they didn't discard anything like from the DDR, the Russian version of the DDR. They didn't discard any of that. They doubled, tripled, quadrupled down. They now live without any type of political input other than the input that they create for themselves. So, where would that lead? Well, if you take a more philosophical approach, you do have to realize that bad causality causes a bad causality loop where you're creating societies where people don't want to live in them, except the people benefiting from them, but that's a very small percentage, so we're talking about a 95-5 type of split again on the statistics. See, people are really big into 80-20 splits. And that 80-20 split comes up time and time and time and time and time and time and time again. It is sort of true on a lot of levels, but 95-5 is a more extreme version of that, and it does seem to show up in more extreme times, especially in times where you have extremely negative management practices. Oh yeah, 5% profit, 95% don't. Comes up time and time and time again. So do you think something like that will lead to strengthening or collective weakening over time? See, this is where philosophers would have to be entered into the conversation, but they don't. They exclude philosophers. They have generally an ingrained cynical worldview that their world proves to them to be the most accurate worldview every day. Because they might have an apartment in Moscow, but it's dumpy and there's an electrical wire that's running through the building in a weird way so that if you get out of the shower on a wet floor, you can electrocute yourself, and the fuse gets blown out in the building, something like that. Or they change the fuses so that it doesn't do that, so you might get a heart attack. So that type of basic cynicism that pervades their life, because it really is there, because this is how their country is run, has been run for decades. A century now, over a century. You really can't convince those types of people with rational argumentation. You could get into like a philosophical exchange with them, but you're really just exchanging words with a cynic. And so you're more or less engaging in a meaningless exercise. Because ultimately they feel that whatever you're saying is not reality-based, because it doesn't reflect the reality, the hell that they're living in. So if you want to connect with them, you have to connect with them in hell, the hell that they're in. But whereas they would say nothing else can exist, nothing else will exist, you can take a different approach. They can't. They don't feel like they can. They don't want to be tricked again. And being tricked is how their system works. So if you're trying to trick them, then they just try to trick you back. You see, this is how they react. Now somebody will say, well, yeah, this proves that they're degenerates. And in a way, if you go to the creation of the Daleks and you see them in that little room, that chamber, the incubation chamber, the simile of that, it's pretty close to the truth. Pretty close. It's just that all of their frustration and rage and anger, they project that outwards to victimize others. That's the empowerment that they get out of the deal. The feeling of empowerment to injure others more than they've been injured, so that they feel like there's been some type of justice that they were able to make happen in an unfair world. But okay, let's come back to the numbers again. Let's just assume, because again, we're dealing with paranoid people, so they're not going to extend membership to just anyone. So let's say 150,000 are on board with their program. Now, some people, if you think the number is higher, put it in the comments. But let's just say 150,000 of these prisoner dilemma people. There's 140 million in the country, so that's 0.001% of the population that profits. So that's a lot lower than 5%. That's not 95.5. So even the 5% that profits residually, probably unintentionally, that's a lot of room for a lot of people. Like, let's again go to 5%. What's 5% of 140 million? Shouldn't need a calculator for this, but just to give people... Is it 7 million? So 7 million from 140 million. But again, you come back to the opposition, 20% opposition, automatic, then you're well over the people that would potentially profit from a system like that. Which is why they can't have elections that are free and open and fair. So is that an indication that things will be getting better or worse there or in the world? See, this is the other thing. They don't feel there's any borders. So they're trying to push the same franchise in every country in the world. And if you look at the Sahel right now, that does seem to speak for their model, doesn't it? At least where places are wrecked anyway or gotten worse because of them. They're certainly not going to be making those ratios change in places like that. 0.001% is about what their economic, socioeconomic and political models can sustain. So, yeah, would a scientist sign off on that? Yes or no? I mean, what type of scientist would sign off on that? What economist would sign off on that? That would be funny. Imagine there's a contest. They have to produce 10 pages of an economic treatise to explain why that economy is better than other models that distribute the wealth to more talented members of their socio-political economic group. Such as the Scandinavian model. I really do recommend the Scandinavian model. Now this is pre-trashing by them and their minions and agents, but the Scandinavian model could certainly be applied to Russia because it's more or less the same territory. Now all the Scandinavians are just going to laugh at that prospect, but they're laughing because they're cynical, because they're dealing with the cynical people on the other side for way too long. So it's understandable that they would think that way, but from the standpoint of every other metric other than the Goonies, the loony Goonies that are running the place, every other argument speaks for the potential of having a Scandinavian model instead of the one that they have right now. So although I realize that 0.001% of the population would hate my guts for saying that, why should I care what they think when the results they produce are bad? They've been bad, they are bad, they'll create even worse results going forward. So, but it's real easy, this might makes right type of thinking that, well, you know, gangrene is really powerful. It really is, but it doesn't make the world a better place. So if you do have penicillin or more penicillin than gangrene, you're going to live a better life. So might is right is wrong. You have powers for good and powers for decomposition. And the more you decompose, however much you might profit, like, of course, these types of bacteria and stuff, they're sucking the sugars and other nutrients out of healthy cells. They're doing that at a rapid rate. But just because they're profiting doesn't mean the organism is. In fact, it's a contradiction. The more they suck out, the less healthy the organism is. So and then you can come back to war. Is war a form of penicillin? Is it white blood cells fighting an invasion? territorial or spiritually? Is it something like that? Do you have mental hygiene, and do you have agitatory propaganda as the counterbalance of that? So right there you see the justification for what they have for their pollution, mental pollution campaigns. So, the Chinese, they find reasons to rationalize gain of function in viral organisms, but the question is of the world scientific community is whether or not those rationalizations are justified, and whether or not they've adequately investigated the potential side effects that also, by the way, negatively influences themselves. Perhaps in the short term, perhaps in the long term, perhaps both. And whether or not they're capable of questioning themselves if they don't have the first right principles that allow them to create a might is right dynamic. So, and again, penicillin is just a part of the equation. A human body, everything in that body has to fight. It's a life or death struggle. It's an existential struggle. Penicillin can help, but the whole rest of the body needs to have a united effort. The patient doesn't eat while he's sick, the patient will die. The patient doesn't drink, doesn't get fluids, the patient will die. The patient takes on a depressive outlook, psychological outlook, versus an optimistic one. Statistics say that statistically they have a higher percentage of dying. This is science. This is not pseudoscience. This is not psychics saying this. This is medically verifiable. That psychology plays a gigantic role in immune processes. If you're capable of generating Tao in large amounts, Qi, you can cure yourself without penicillin in some cases. Not in some cases, okay. It's best not to try to prove your skills in that area if you don't have to, or base it on that because you want to prove a point. That's not recommended. That's like saying, yeah, of course I can climb the Mount Everest. Well, some people manage it, but many don't, and it's probably best not to even try. But this time is especially disappointing or disillusioning for people that were idealists going into it. And we were bamboozled, bibbity-dibbitied. However, we need new words for the bamboozling we got. As far as the other side's intentions, their actions, their organizations, their methods of operations, their alliances, their friends, their buddies, their leveragings, their not so leveragings, their replacements, their substitutions. All of that was just funky monkey. So not understanding them properly, not understanding the problems that they have, not understanding the problems that they present outside of their borderless entity as they see themselves. Again, that's like misunderstanding how gangrene works. You don't understand how a gangrene works or the Black Plague, then there's no way to really cure yourself or to keep yourself safe from infection. Like, oh yeah, I'm cured from Black Death. Can't get it again. Oh yeah, you can. You hang out in a place where it's being spread via the water vapor in the room because that's how it was spread the most in places like Venice. And yet, up until recently, the the big dumb trope that historians and other academicians and misinformed people and cultural misperceptions and storytellings delivered to us moderns in this neo-barbarian time was that it was all fleas and rats, which of course was a part of it, but spreading it via water vapor that's created via breathing is a lot more deadly if you think about it. So if you're focused on the fleas and rats and not on the other thing, or not a combination of the two, how are you going to effectively protect yourself against another outbreak? Well, the answer is you won't. You're a dummy. You're an ignoramus. Your whole culture's stupid to the extent that it believes the other story. Because the people that were tasked with understanding those things either didn't communicate it effectively, or it got taken to one of these information nodes where these sabotaged cultures are set up on purpose to suppress the truth or to distort it. So again, it's not just the Russians, like it's not just the nationality. Look at everybody that's worked with them in the past 100 years. Any type of groups. Because once you get in on that side, they don't change. You don't get out of that business. So that shellacking, that sulfuric shellacking that they get by that association, that they can never wash that off. They're implicated in the racket. They sting. Breathe in deeply. That rotten egg smell, it just sticks to them. So, for all of the horrible, horrible, gigantic crimes that they've perpetrated outside of their borders, really doesn't compare to all the crimes that they perpetrated inside their borders. So just keep that in mind. This 0.001%. So does the world really need people like that? Or does the world get what it needs? It's not the needs of the world, really. When were the needs of the world ever really adequately addressed? So, but yeah, now that you know that bubonic plague is spread in different ways, and you know how people can be cured, and you know a little bit more about social pathogens and their purveyors and their methods, then you have a good chance of surviving, of being without the bubonic plague.